Welcome, everybody, to SDP Connect. My name is Judy Mark. I'm the president of Disability Voices United. And we are gathered here today to talk about the self-determination program. But before we begin, I'm going to ask all of you to pick a language. You do that by going down to your screen and clicking on interpretation. It's often a globe, and choose English, Spanish, or Korean. For you English speakers, you want to make sure to choose English because we will very likely have questions in Spanish or Korean, and you want to be able to hear them. So please take a moment now and pick your language. Thank you. Also, I'm going to tell you that we will be taking questions. You can ask your questions in two different ways. You can ask it verbally by using the raise hand feature like this, or which is at the bottom of your screen, or you can put your questions in the chat. We are actually tracking your questions, and we will sort of go back and forth between questions you ask, between raised hands and things and people asking them in the chat. All right. Before I move forward, I'm actually going to ask Tina to introduce herself, and then we're going to get started on some issues before the main topic.
My name is Tina Ewing-Wilson. I'm an SDP participant since 2001, before the law when it was a pilot project. I'm the human half of a service dog team, and I am practicing formal supported decision making, and I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. So before we get started on the talking about the individual budget and the new directive that just came out, I know that not all of you are able to go to the conference, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the conference that the Disability Voices United is hosting next week. And I'm going to share my screen to show you the agenda. And I'm going to go through it rather quickly. So let me share my screen. All right. So the conference is called Empowerment in Practice. For those of you in Northern California, if you were able to make it to our Northern California Oakland conference, you saw some of this content, but you should also know that this conference is 4 times as large. So there's going to be a lot more at this conference. So first of all, I should tell everybody who's coming that you need to download your Whova app. The entire conference is on Whova. So I would love it if somebody from staff could put some information on how people can actually download the Whova app if they haven't already. And that way you can actually get access to this agenda. Registration will begin at 8:15. We're starting the day with welcomes from 2 government officials who are very supportive of the issues that we will be talking about during the day. Yang Lee from Department of Developmental Services and Aaron Carruthers from the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. This is also the way, by the way, that you can find everything out about your speakers. So if you click on Tina, who's speaking on the opening panel, you're able to see all about Tina, her bio, and which panel she's on, which is great. And Whova is also a great way for you to meet each other and to find out who has things in common and to stay in touch over time, because the Whova app stays around for a long time. So we're having an opening panel of self-advocates who are both in the self-determination program and practice supported decision-making, talking about how their lives are affected by it, with telling stories about it. Then we're going to have a plenary panel of amazing people to talk about supported decision-making in action, hosted with the prime attorneys being Will Liner from Disability Rights California and Claudia Center from Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund. They both helped write the law that put supported decision making into law for the first time. Obviously, our Vivian Doe from DVU, our amazing expert on SDM, will be there, as well as self-advocate Dashiell Meyer and his mom, Kristen. We're then going to go into lots of breakout sessions about supported decision making. I'll just you'll be able to find out about supported decision making in all different areas, including healthcare, finances, education, transition age. And then in addition to those sort of special things, you should know that we will have panels exclusively in Spanish at all of the breakout sessions. So I know a lot of Spanish speaking people really appreciate having sessions exclusively in Spanish, and we are trying to meet that need. We're also having leaders from regional centers and DDS talk about their commitment to supported decision making. And also, we're going to talk about conservatorship, where there are new rights that conservatees have under this law. And then we do a second set of breakout sessions, including a clinic on supported decision making, where you will actually be able to walk through with them a supported decision making agreement, powers of attorney, and other things like that. And we also will be giving advice about exiting a conservatorship as well, if that's something that you might be interested in. We will then have a wonderful, delicious lunch by Wolfgang Puck in the courtyard. And then the rest of the day, we'll be talking about self-determination. So we're going to begin the afternoon with a greeting from Senator Bill Emerson. He was the author of the self-determination law. And then we will have a session about the latest changes to the SDP, some of which we're going to be discussing today, but you're going to actually hear it from people at DDS who helped write that directive, including Marlene Morales and Katie Hornberger. And then there will be a few of us responding to these latest changes, including myself and Rick Wood, who you're going to hear from today, as well as Bibo Saab, who is an SDP participant and a senior attorney at Disability Rights California. We're then going to go into two sets of breakout sessions on the self-determination program. We will have an entire session exclusively in Korean, and also two other sessions exclusively in Spanish. We will also be offering Spanish and Korean interpretation, as well as ASL interpretation, at most of these breakout sessions. Certainly all sessions will be interpreted in Spanish, where we're not offering it in Spanish alone. So some of the really cool topics that we'll be talking about is, for those of you who are not yet in the SDP, we're going to give you advice on how to start your SDP journey. We're going to have sessions on how your person-centered plan and your individual program plan actually lead to getting your individual budget amount. We're going to talk about that a bit today as well. We're having a session that Sonni, who's one of our speakers today, is on, called "Why Does the SDP Have to Be So Complicated?" And we're having a session on working well with your FMS, or your financial management service. And after that, we're going to have a session called "Are You Stuck? Help to Get You Back on Track." We have 4 amazing traditional service providers who also provide services in the SDP, who will be on a panel talking about that. We have a great panel called "Keeping the Person in Person-Centered Planning," especially for people who use alternative ways to communicate. And then we're having a great session called "Hiring and Keeping Great Staff," which is always a challenge that Tina and Rick are going to be on. And then you're also going to learn about spending plans as well. And then the final panel of the day is a panel of sort of statewide experts who are going to talk about the challenges that lie ahead for people with disabilities. And that includes things like changes to the self-determination program, but much more significantly, the massive Medicaid cuts that are heading toward us over the next few years. And we're going to also be looking at other current issues that might be changing, like limitations of IHSS hours, or co-pays or restrictions on Medi-Cal, on your health care. And on that panel, we'll have a bunch of statewide experts as well. So that is the conference, and you can find that. I think we put the link to that in the chat, and we can put, if we didn't, we will put it there. For those of you who have not registered for the conference, we are unfortunately not just sold out, we are oversold. We actually have 400 people registered and the room sits 300 people. So obviously this is going to be a major issue for us. We will have overflow rooms if everybody actually shows up, and everybody will get a chance to participate during the day, even if we are oversold. All right, so that is the conference. We're excited to see you all next week. It's going to be an amazing day. Just looking at if there's any okay, nothing. Is the conference being recorded? Yes. So for those of you who are paid registrants, everybody will receive a copy of the recordings of every single session, including the breakout sessions, and you will get that as part of your registration. For those of you who did not register but want to see them, we're going to be selling access to those recordings for a very small amount of money. We will make that available to you in the next week or so. No, in the next couple of weeks, we'll give you the link to be able to register for that recording. All right, so let us begin the topic of the day. So I have a set of slides that we're going to show, but we're also going to give you links to the actual directives. And I'm going to present the slides, but I'm not going to be the only person commenting. I've invited two amazing folks, Rick Wood and Sonni Charness, and I will introduce them and have them introduce themselves more completely after we show some of these slides. So if Kaylee could share the slides, I'd appreciate that. All right. So there was a directive that the Department of Developmental Services sent out last Friday. I believe it was Friday. It was dated November 6th. That's probably Friday. And they call it the Regional Center Reporting about Large Changes in Self-Determination Individual Budgets. And so we're going to explain what that is, but go ahead and look in the chat and you'll be able to actually download the actual directive so you can see it in the DDS's words. So go ahead to the next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to give you a quick overview. So this directive establishes a requirement and a process for regional centers to provide information about what they consider large changes in a person's individual budget. And we'll go over what they consider large changes. DDS is not going to be reviewing every single budget. They're only going to be reviewing a random sample of budgets. And you'll see in the directive that DDS has actually given the exact numbers of budgets that they want to be reviewed for each regional center. And the reason they say that they're doing this is to provide policymakers, which means legislators, I guess, a better understanding of the reasons for large changes to the budgets, to the SDP participants' budgets. The thing that they note that is important is that the directive does not give DDS a role in the approval of individual budgets or spending plans. It just basically they're reviewing it to sort of process a larger amount of information. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. So here are the things specifically that that the directive is requiring regional centers to do. They're saying once a year, at the end of February, basically, regional centers must provide information on a random sample of individual budgets that increased by $20,000 or more compared to the participant's prior year of authorized services. So that dollar amount, 20,000, is the amount that DDS considers to be a large increase. We'll talk about whether we agree with that or not later. And so you should know that that comparison of $20,000 is for both new participants and continuing participants. So the new participants would be comparing it to the cost of services that were authorized in the traditional system. But they're also going to be looking at continuing budgets. So if you got a $20,000 or more increase from the previous year's budget, you're going to be part of that random sample as well. Each regional center has a specified number of budgets. If you look on the directive, you'll see, and we'll put the link in again to the directive. But if you look at the directive, you'll see, you know what I might do? Do you mind? Well, no, I don't want to mess this up. We'll do it later because you guys are wonderfully sharing the screen right now. So I'll show you the numbers after we go through the slides. So the number of budgets is based on the number of SDP participants a regional center has. So if you're a regional center that has very few SDP participants, which of course is a really significant concern of ours, but if you're a regional center like Tri-County's regional center, which only has a handful, like they have very few participants, they only have to review 16 budgets, even though they're a medium-sized regional center. But if you're West Side Regional Center, which is the second smallest regional center, but actually has the highest percentage by far, like twice as many in percentage of any other regional center, they are sort of being penalized because they actually have to review 75 budgets out of their, I think they have around 600 or 700, I think, in total. So yeah, so it's actually a problem that they're doing it this way. But okay, go ahead, next slide, please. All right, so regional centers have to submit to DDS the certified budget. So there's a sort of calculation of how they figured it out, and the certified spending plan for each participant that's part of this random sample. And they have to submit this form which is called Attachment A, which you would see in the chat that's been several times in the chat. And we're going to go over Attachment A in a minute. So regional centers are encouraged to work with the participant service coordinator because the service coordinator is the one that was at the IPP meeting where the budget was discussed. And so, you know, this is something that we're going to be talking about in a minute. Like, what does it mean to work with the participant service coordinator? So the due date of all this information is on February 28th, 2026, and every year thereafter at the end of February. Regional centers are going to get training and technical assistance on this. And I should also mention that this Friday, in 2 days, DDS is having a public meeting about this directive. And I'm happy that we're getting to do our SDP Connect before that public meeting, because that way we'll be able to explain some things to you in advance. I don't know if either Kaylee or Eric can throw in to the chat. Oh, there it is. Already done. Appreciate that. Amazing staff that we have. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so now let's go over what's in Attachment A. So it's a form that regional centers have to use. It asks like basic things initially, like the UCI number or the unique client identifier number of each of the SDP participants, their certified budget amount, and whether this is their first budget or their continuing budget. So that's like basic stuff. So let's continue on to the next slide. So also in this form is they ask whether this is So if you've said yes, this is the person's first budget, then you have to answer this question. Did the individual need services that were not available in the traditional service delivery system? And I'm very, very pleased to add this question, by the way, because that's why most people go into the SDP because they weren't able to access certain kinds of needed services in the traditional system. So that is asked. Then the next question they asked is, what were the barriers in the traditional service delivery system that prevented access to these services? And so there are some options they give the regional centers, such as geographic location, limited service providers in the area where the person lives, limited providers to address the individual's actual needs. There's a wait list, like maybe there are providers, but you can't get in. They don't use the term wait list. We've reframed it, but that's what they mean by that option. And there are no providers who meet their language needs or other cultural needs. So go to the next slide, please. So then they also ask, was there any change in circumstance, needs, and or resources that caused a budget adjustment? And then they give examples of what those changes might be. They also give a chance, we're giving the options that they give, but they also have a final option, which is other, where the regional center can put something in that they want to put in that's not offered here. But so the changes in circumstances examples are exiting the school district. So obviously when a person leaves school and the regional center is responsible for what they're doing during the day, whereas before that it was the school district, that's obviously going to increase the budget. Maybe there's a change in living arrangement. Like my son moved out last year, and that obviously he needed significantly more services because of that. So that required a change in his budget. There might be a change in employment of the individual. Maybe the person was working, lost their job, and now needs help with finding a new job, or a change in health, which is actually very common among our community, that maybe an individual now needs nursing services that they didn't get before. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So their examples of changes in needs include a change in health needs. So it might be that the person has has maybe is now on a feeding tube when they weren't before, and that would require, a higher level of personal assistance or nursing aides. There's maybe a change in physical support needs. Maybe the person was ambulatory and was able to walk, and now they can no longer do that. There's also maybe a change in employment status. This is, I guess, kind of similar to the last one. Maybe there was an assessment needed for specialized kind of service. I also think of changes in needs as behavioral needs. That's the thing that I see the most for changes in budget size is a person either has some really serious behavioral challenges that require an additional services, maybe going to a 2-on-1 for a certain amount of time. And that would happen in the traditional system as well. But it also, by the way, could mean that your budget would go down if the person's behaviors improve, which is, of course, the entire goal of having an increase in services. Next slide, please. These are examples of changes in resources now. So they got or they lost a generic service and they have to specify which one. So it might be that maybe you're getting you were on Medi-Cal and that was your health insurance, and they were paying for maybe behavioral therapy or speech therapy, and you've now lost your insurance. That would be a loss of a generic service. A change in insurance access, same thing. Like maybe you were in private insurance and you lost your private insurance, and now you're having to transition to Medi-Cal, but it sometimes can take months to get on Medi-Cal. A change in your natural support system, so that could be one of the parents dying. So maybe one of the parents or both parents were very helpful to the individual and was able to help them at times as an unpaid natural support. There's also maybe that there are no available resources in that area that match the identified needs. So it's possible that a person is living in a very remote area of the state. The other option they provide, which I think is going to be checked for many people that I know, is a traditional rate change. So remember that your individual budget is based on the services you would be getting in the traditional system. In the traditional system, service providers have gotten a massive rate increase over the past 4 years, including just in the beginning of 2025, where they got a 20% rate increase. And so people's budgets will go up if they are able to access the traditional rate change. And then you can put another reason not specified. So, yeah, okay, thank you. They also ask this question, services that are funded outside of the participant's individual budget, because they want to, I think DDS will want to get a sense of all of the services the person has, not only just the SDP, but these other services. There was a directive put out a couple of years ago that specifically say these are the services that are not part of the person's budget, but you still can access them through your regional center. And they include co-pays with your insurance. Usually it's for behavioral services. It includes the paid internship program, rental assistance, and coordinated family support services. So these are some, and there's also competitive integrated employment, which is also on that list. Next slide, please. All right, so that was rather quick. So before we finish and turn it over to Rick and Tina and Sonni, would you mind putting up, and you only need to do this in English because the regional centers are pretty much the same names in English and Spanish. Would you mind putting up the directory for me, Kaylee, and then scroll down to the names of the regional centers? Or I could do that too. Oh, no, you got it. Fabulous. Okay, if you can make it just slightly bigger. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Yeah, we're going to keep going bigger. All right, that should do it probably. All right, so I just wanted you to see that these numbers are split by age. So they want to make sure that half of the budgets they look at are for children and the other half of the budgets they look at are for adults. And so you'll see that, like, I can tell you there are some regional centers that have very, very few participants. Golden Gate Regional Center is a good example. I mean, they're not a tiny regional center, but they're a pretty medium-sized regional center, but they don't have a lot of SDP participants. So they only have to look at 38. They only have to review 38. If you can scroll down a little bit, please. So looking at Inland Regional Center, it's at the top of that page, they have to review 87, but they are the largest regional center, like by far. They have over 50,000 consumers. And if you want to compare that to Westside Regional Center, if you scroll down to Westside has to review 75, even though Westside only has a total of, I think, around 10,000 consumers. So they have 5 times as many consumers at, even though I hate that word consumers, so I'll say clients. They have 5 times as many clients at Inland than at Westside, but they're providing roughly the same amount. So it really is a disincentive for regional centers to have lots of participants in their program because it just means that they have to review a lot more. All right, so go ahead and stop sharing that. And we are tracking questions in the chat, and we'll give you all a chance to give your comments and questions as well. But I first want to turn to Rick Wood and ask him to introduce himself and then to sort of provide some of what you're thinking about when you look at this directive.
Sorry, the
You're
host
good.
just unmuted me. Hi, everybody. My name is Rick Wood. I am the original and still current co-chair of the Statewide Self-Determination Advisory Committee. My regional center is Kern, where up until this past year, I have chaired the local advisory committee for, I think, close to 10 years now. Um, I have a son who's 30 who was in the original Kern Regional Center self-determination pilot, transitioned, of course, into the self-determination program. And in addition, along with Judy and some others here today, maybe others here today, I was a member of the DDS advisory group that developed the waiver application that brought self-determination to us, including the 3-year period in which up to 2,500 people were eligible for enrollment. And then, of course, it's now available for everyone. So I've been in this game, if you will, for quite a long time. And it is pretty fascinating to see this come out. Uh, and I'll tell you why. First of all, if you take it at face value, it's important for policymakers, those are legislators, to have information about the program, not just who's in it, but also um, what it looks like budget wise for each person. I assume they're going to extrapolate from that some information that they can apply to the whole system. And so I see it as a legitimate, in fact, a necessary exercise. Um, the question that I had when I saw it, and I took a look at the slides as well, is um, so the program is required by law to be revenue neutral. What that means is that this is not supposed to cost more than it would have cost had the SDP program not been available, or putting it differently, had people been in the traditional system. And so my initial reaction is, well, wait a minute. This just seems, on its face, incongruous with self-determination, because self-determination is designed overall to provide flexibility for those to access services to allow them to live their best life, which may be inconsistent with the services that are available or the services that are prescribed under the traditional delivery system. So I'm a bit concerned about really what this is going to develop into. In other words, gee, we've got this program. Flexibility is at the heart of it. Um, and is this going to be an effort to make changes to the program that will not allow those who are receiving services, which in some instances, as you saw on the slides, are necessarily going to increase in excess of $20,000 a year? And then the other issue is, what are they going to do with it? Who gets this? Um, what is the department going to do with it? I'm not skeptical of the motives of anyone, but I think we need to be vigilant to make sure that the information that they get is not somehow used to either restrict or negatively impact the program. So that was my first reaction when I saw it. And I'll also mention, Judy, if you could address this, I didn't see unmet needs anywhere. That was that's significant to me. We spoke about the changes. We spoke about access to services, but I didn't see unmet needs there anywhere in this thing. So I'm wondering what the relationship is of that. But my initial comments are ultimately what's going to happen. What is going to happen as a result of the gathering and then the analysis of the information.
Yeah, that's a great question on the unmet need. So I want to remind everybody about the trailer bill language that just came out in July or August around unmet need. So the only people who are allowed to claim unmet need anymore are new participants who have no or low POS. They haven't defined what low means, but they were floating around the word, the number $2,000. So anybody who started with basically no services at all and now has services are really about they can walk into their IPP and say we have unmet need. No one else can show that. I so because no one else can claim unmet need, that's probably why they very intentionally didn't put it on the list. And so what I tell people is, okay, you can't use the term unmet need anymore, but you can now use the term need. These are my needs. I'm not going to explain to you that they've never been met before. They're just my needs. So, okay, so let me bring in Sonni as well. And asking what you're thinking about this.
Thanks, everyone, or thanks, Judy. Hi, everyone. My name is Sonni Charness. I'm the founder and CEO of Guidelight Group, and we do independent facilitation as well as independent facilitator training. And what's interesting is I agree with many of Rick's thoughts that he expressed in terms of understanding and appreciating the department's interest in collecting information so that hopefully they can make improvements and make decisions based on facts and be responsive to the needs of the people. That's a optimistic but maybe realistic hope or expectation of the department's motivation for collecting this data. So at face value, I don't, nothing strikes me as nefarious there. But my initial concern, if to identify what that would be, I'm looking at this from a slightly different perspective than Rick, because I in our work we support many families, individuals and families who are participants in SDP, and many independent facilitators who are trying to support or are supporting participants and families. And so my concern when looking at this is what additional barriers and bureaucracy could be erected as a result of this. And so I'm just, obviously I worry that there is the disincentive for having high numbers in SDP that Judy mentioned. Also, is there going to be is $20,000 suddenly going to become a magic number at the regional center where if you need something that's, you have a change in circumstance need or, a valid reason for that your budget may need to change and that reason results in a $15,000 change, it's not going to be a problem. But if it's a $23,000 change, suddenly it is going to be a problem. And then, so that's kind of, a concern. And I think a lot of the frustration that people feel across the system with at the regional center level and at the, the DDS level is just that there seems to be far more to do than there are people to do it. And adding more administrative tasks like this to an already overburdened system and program, the sort of unintended consequences of that are a bit of a concern.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with both of you. You know, I agree with what you both said that they need to understand why this program is not cost neutral. But one of the fears I have, and then I'm going to bring in Tina at the end, um, one of my concerns is that regional centers are not going to be monitored as they fill out these forms. The participants will not know if they have been selected, and we will not have access to the form to see how it was filled out by the regional center. And so one of the requests that I've made of DDS is to offer opportunities for the participant to be notified and for the participant or their family to make comments on it. And I think it could go many different ways. I think one way is that a regional center could, especially remember, IPPs are not that person-centered. Most of them are not really that great of an experience. And so it's unclear to me that people's real needs have ever been really described well at an IPP. So the service coordinator would need to go back and look at the notes from the IPP, and there may not be great notes about from there. So they may not be able to make a very valid case of why this person's budget was increased. There's also some regional centers who will use this as an opportunity to lower people's budgets, not just to keep the increase at less than 20,000, but to proactively in the future say, your budget's too high, we're going to lower it. And maybe those are valid reasons because maybe their budgets were too high in the first place, but they agreed to this budget at some point, and they would need to go back and change their mind about why they agreed to this amount of money. And then I also think there's going to be some really generous, good regional centers who are going to be freaking out right now and are going to be saying, oh my God, every single one of our SDP participants have that much of an increase. And what consequences are we going to have because we've been generous? And we generally find that those regional centers that have been generous in the traditional system are also generous in the SDP. I think there are some exceptions here or there, but that's what we find. So I worry about the generous regional centers saying, oh my God, we can't be generous anymore. And that everybody goes to the lowest common denominator. And all of the good regional centers become like the bad regional centers. So I have a lot of grave concerns about how this gets implemented and want to make sure that we have the opportunity to see the reasoning behind what the regional centers are saying.
Judy, the other thing I forgot to mention is we are still in the midst of rate reform impacting people's budgets at almost every single regional center. And so because rate reform, the final portion of rate reform just went into play. It was supposed to be in January, but they didn't have the rates, and so the final portion of rate reform is still trickling in the traditional system and in people's budgets, and so that is a very valid reason at this point in time that we would expect to see, even if someone does not have changes in their life or anything, that their budget will change. And that is on the worksheet in the attachment, one of the options to select, but I am a little worried that's still just the volume of budgets that are increasing by, probably more than $20,000 is gonna, scare some people, and that, but that unjustly so.
Right, agree. So let me bring in Tina now. So Tina, I'm wondering, you as a longtime SDP participant, what are some of your concerns, or if you're happy with this directive?
I'm definitely not happy with this directive. I'm concerned that the $90,000 budget, plateau they're talking about, budgets over that are the ones scrutinized. I'm afraid that regional centers will start trying to keep budgets below that. Instead of doing a person-centered process where we actually find out what the individual's needs are. That's probably the thing that worries me the most. Also, worried about the fact that they want the spending plans too, because if in the past they haven't really messed with the spending plan process, but it feels like they're beginning to do that. I mean,
Mhm.
the whole idea of the self-determination program is that we take the amount of money they would have given us and we use it in a way that is better for us. But if they start getting so involved in that part of the process that it takes away our freedom, the point of SDP is lost.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so now we're going to go to, everybody can stay spotlighted, please. And now we're going to go to questions and comments from the audience, from the community. If you you can use the raise hand feature like Miriam just did, or you can find it at the bottom of your screen. And a reminder for those of you who came in late to pick a language, to pick, if you're English speaker, pick English or Spanish or Korean, because we are going to be likely getting some comments and questions in other languages. We've been tracking what you've been writing in the chat too. So why don't we start, Tina, with you selecting the people to ask questions, and I'm going to go through and look at the chat.
Sorry, I'm muted. Miriam is the first hand raised that I see on my list.
Hi, I posted a couple of comments. I don't know if you want me to
Yeah.
address them here. Okay. So the first thing that I noticed, I think there is an error in the attachment, in the flow of questions. I think that's incorrect. If somebody can check on that. And then CSCs will definitely need training on this. This is not trivial. If they want to do this attachment, this questionnaire quickly, there will be mistakes. What is the difference between a change in health and a change in health needs? What is the difference between change in employment or change in employment status?
Mhm.
I don't know. I need an explanation on that one. But I did want to say that on this questionnaire, you can check if it was caused by rate increases. So a lot of people ask that question, because I definitely see that a lot of budgets will have a significant increase just because of the rate increases. So this year's or next year's, the first year's data, in my opinion, isn't really valid. And, if a service coordinator forgets to check this, and if there was any other change, then the data will just not be correct. But I had so many more things I wanted to say. Oh, Tina, you said something about the 90,000 benchmark. I think that went away. I think that was replaced with the $20,000 increase now. So they did not mention the 90,000. The 20,000 still doesn't make sense to me. Why didn't they use a percentage?
Mhm.
A $20,000 increase on a $400,000 budget isn't much,
Mhm.
but it is, of course, if you have a $20,000 budget. And I don't know if anybody's interested. I looked at the numbers for North LA. I am glad that in the first meeting, they made it sound like they would check every single budget above 90,000. So they
Yeah,
took,
that's what I thought too. I didn't know they had changed
yes.
that.
No, they replaced it with the 20,000, and at least they are not requesting this data for every single budget with that increase. That's why they came up with these numbers. It looks like the total number is close to 10% of SDP participants for this regional center, and it looks like they are looking at 20% of transition budgets, and for North LA, it was about 8% for renewal budgets. So these numbers, better than 100%. And hopefully that will also, people had concerns that the regional centers will try to stay below the $20,000 increase, but since not all of them have to be reported, hopefully that will ease it something for them. But I don't know if these numbers, they will probably change every year, right? Or are they gonna stay
No, they'll change.
every year? So the more participants. So yeah, that's definitely still a concern then. The more clients they have in SDP, the more they have to report.
Right. So
So-
Miriam, can I ask you, when you said that there's a problem in the flow of the form, because I'm looking at the form right now and I'm not seeing the problem. And so
Go to question 3. I don't know if you can share the screen.
So question
um,
4. Right, Miriam?
yes.
Question 4.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm not
So
looking.
question
Three.
4 asks for
Question-
individual budgets. Did the individual need services that were not available in the traditional service delivery system?
Sorry, Miriam was right. I think it's question 3.
Question 3. So
No.
it says, is this the individual's first SDP budget? So if the question is no, it
Mhm.
says skip to 5, and 5 doesn't make sense
It should
for
be.
renewal budgets. For renewal budgets.
Yes, you're right. It should have been skipped to 6.
Correct.
Oh my God. I'll let
Yes.
DDS know that.
Yes.
Yeah, they should have found that.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Judy, I have
Yeah.
a question. Is
Yeah.
this process replacing the old process where they randomly audited higher cases?
They have never actually done that. They've
No,
never
they
randomly
have.
audited.
I've been audited
Yeah,
before.
we've had it.
Oh, you mean higher budgets, not higher increases.
Yes,
Larger
my
budgets.
my
Yeah.
budget's been audited actually twice in the time that I've been in the SDP. So I just wondered, is this the new way they're doing audits?
No,
So they're still doing that as well.
I think they'll do both.
There's one more thing I want to mention, and I wrote it in the chat too. I am concerned about them requesting the spending plans too, because that has nothing to do with budget increases. So this is overstepping in my thinking. I don't know. And what are they going to do with that information? Because that now will also scrutinize or get the service coordinators and SDP departments to scrutinize spending plans even more.
Well, I'm not so worried about that because you should know that DDS has access to everyone's spending plan anyway. So I don't think this is anything new for them, but I think because it's going to be attached to the form, they just kind of want it all in one place. But I can promise you that DDS is looking at our spending plans right now.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how are, that's my last thing, I think. How are regional centers gonna choose the budgets randomly?
The regional centers are going to do it. And I said, please, to DDS, please do not assume that regional centers will know how to do that. So they're going to give them, what they told me is they're going to give all of the UCI numbers that would be in this amount that they would have to look at. They would give them all the UCI numbers and that the regional center would come up with a way to randomly pick it. I know that there are like there's like programs online that you can have, you throw in a bunch of numbers. I said, you need to be very specific because I could see regional centers having no clue how to do this. And one of the things we haven't even talked about is the fact that they are very clear in the directive. They say this should not delay anybody. It says, I need to find it, but they said something about this process should not delay anybody's SDP moving forward. But I don't believe that that's going to happen because I believe that right now already the system is so slow. There are no timelines. It takes forever for regional centers to get back to people with questions or changes in spending plans and so now you are wailing and saying, okay, you regional center staff who are supposed to be actually returning phone calls from the clients that you serve, you are now going to be spending your time filling out these forms. So their excuse is going to be, I'm so sorry, I haven't had time because I've been filling out these forms for DDS. So I definitely think it's going to have a major impact on timing. And the only way we could do that is to sort of make sure that people are that they put other people in charge of this. But if service coordinators are having to do everything, I think it's going to be a problem.
Can
All right,
someone put a link
go ahead, sorry.
to the directive in the chat? I think a few people in the chat are asking to see it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you could put it back in there. Yeah, people show up late, so they need to get it again. All right, let me go. So there's been a lot of things in the chat around rate increases. So one question was asked, how is rate reform factored into the $20,000 increase? I think I covered that when I showed you that one of the questions, one of the potential answers is why was this budget increased? Is if you check the box rate increases, I have a feeling a large number of them are going to have that box checked. And then DDS really wouldn't be able to say anything about that because they just raised the rates in the traditional system and we have a right to have those same rates. But at the same time, people are asking in the chat about specifically Harbor Regional Center, but I know there are other regional centers doing the same thing. And that is that Harbor Regional Center is saying that no one is allowed to have the rate increases put into their budget unless they are using traditional service providers who received the rate increases. And to me, that is the opposite of what the directive around rate increases meant. I know for sure that Harbor is doing this. I've heard that there are several other regional centers that are now copying them. And I can also tell you that I know of several individuals at Harbor Regional Center who are taking this to fair hearing, including like one is happening this week if it didn't already happen. So I know that people are challenging it. I've personally spoken to DDS about this. I've gone to the Harbor Regional Center Local Volunteer Advisory Committee meeting to talk about it. And of course, the regional center staff at that meeting said, oh, we talked to DDS and they said what we're doing is fine. So, I'm getting different information depending on who I talk to, and it's very frustrating. But I wanted to, I think that was basically all the things about rate increases. All right, so let's take the next hand up.
Sorry, Lulu. Lulu, you can unmute.
Sí, yo quisiera mencionar que pues esto de Harvard y esto que están haciendo estos centros regionales es muy preocupante y creo que no hay claridad. Entonces me preocupa cómo un juez va a tomar esta decisión si mismo DDS no tiene claridad. Entonces se hizo una directiva donde es una orden. Entonces, ¿cómo debemos tomar las directivas? ¿Como una ley o las debemos de tomar como una sugerencia? ¿Es mandatorio o no es mandatorio? Tengo preocupación con eso porque está afectando las familias. Se supone que la autodeterminación es usar el mismo presupuesto que se usaría en el tradicional para hacer un poco más con esos fondos. Es ese, si no me equivoco, la finalidad. Entonces es preocupante esto que está pasando. Ojalá que podamos tener claridad de parte de DDS para saber qué es lo que debemos hacer y cómo valorar sus directivas. Y la otra cosa que quiero comentar para la señora Judy, si pudieran trabajar más en hacer entrenamientos más avanzados para los facilitadores independientes, ya que no hay agencias para hacer este tipo de entrenamientos. Quizás podríamos pensar que ustedes podrían hacer esto y poder capacitar a los facilitadores independientes en las cosas que nos falta saber, y especialmente los hispanos, los facilitadores independientes hispanos que estamos ayudando a las familias hispanas, que las familias se están quedando también en disparidad, además de la disparidad del servicio tradicional, ahora estamos quedando en disparidad en los servicios de autodeterminación porque no hay suficientes facilitadores hispanos y los que hay, pues no tenemos acceso a las capacitaciones en inglés. Hay varias agencias que están haciéndolo en inglés, pero no en español. Entonces, solicitamos su apoyo de buscar los recursos y también estoy nuevamente animando a la señora Judith a buscar esos fondos. Quizás podemos, las familias que están aquí, quizás tengan una mejor idea de cómo conseguir alguna donación o de parte de DDS alguna algunos fondos que ayuden a la mesa que hay de facilitadores independientes para que los facilitadores hispanos podamos tener acceso también a esa mesa donde sé que lo hace y admiro y respeto todo el trabajo que hace DBU, pero sí le animaría a que nos apoye a los facilitadores hispanos, que podamos tener este acceso. A lo mejor encontramos alguna solución, sabemos todo el trabajo que hace, lo respetamos, lo admiramos tanto, lo sabe usted, pero le animamos a que busquemos esto. A lo mejor por ahí podemos encontrar alguna solución.
Thank you so much, Lulu. So DVU has not historically trained independent facilitators. There are actually lots of groups, including Sonny's group, that does training of independent facilitators. It doesn't mean we never will, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. I'm just going to tell you that we are very busy and with the Medicaid cuts coming next year, we've really got to prioritize that. I don't know, Sonny, are you doing advanced training for independent facilitators?
We do advanced training for independent facilitators, but we do it in English because I speak English and it's coming from my brain and my colleagues, but I wish I spoke Spanish. I don't. And I can only speak for my organization. There are organizations out there like ASLA doing training in Spanish. And so I'm glad that that exists. But what it comes down to is funding. We have a huge, very robust training and a lot of advanced training available, but to offer it in multiple languages, it's expensive and we have to get grants and pull it all together. It's a big undertaking we just haven't, a guideline group, we just haven't done that. We haven't been able to do that. So.
Yeah. I hear that. I know that Autism Society of LA has some version of something in that training. And I know Rosie Laska, just raise your hand. I can't throw you to the head of the line, Rosie, but I know Rosie also offers some training in Spanish. So if Rosie, we'll call on you in a little bit, but you might want to put your contact information for Lulu in the chat. However, I am going to make this comment, and I know Rick will second it. There are lots of independent facilitators out there who don't have any clue what they're doing. They haven't gone through Sonny's training, Autism Society's training. They haven't gone through Rosie's training. They haven't gone through State Council's training. Whoever's done the training, they haven't gone through formal training. You're not required to go through formal training to be an IF. You have to show you've had some kind of experience. But I want to give advice to all of you out there who are entering the program, who have hired independent facilitators. You need to be really careful. If the independent facilitator, if you're interviewing them and they say to you, we're going to get you a huge budget, I promise you, we're going to get you a big budget, walk the other way. Because no one can make that promise for sure. No one deserves a big budget. Your budget is based upon your needs that are identified through a person-centered planning process and the IPP. So no one deserves a big budget. So if somebody's promising you that, they are a bad independent facilitator, very bad. And I can also tell you that right now there are no actual standards for independent facilitators, but they're coming. They're coming very soon. And then maybe, I know, Sonny, some of you have started some sort of association with standards. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so agree with Judy. I believe in many independent facilitators out there. I think I speak for a whole lot of people when I say that we believe that everybody should have a menu of options of excellent independent facilitators to choose between. Everybody should feel that you can hire someone great. If you don't like them, you should feel that you can let them go and find somebody else. That's the vision. And that there should be, to say you're an independent facilitator should mean something, not just one day you just decide to call yourself an independent facilitator. And so a group of independent facilitators have gotten together to form an organization called CAL-IF. It's a professional association for independent facilitators with the goal of professionalizing the profession. We are still in early phases. I'm a member, I'm not on the board. So if you're a board member, forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, but we are a professional organization, and the idea is that we have ethical standards as an association that people have to follow. There will be a way to file a complaint against an IF who does something unethical or wrong, and we will have a review process for that. And we will have standards in terms of practices, and in order to become a member of CAL-IF, you have to demonstrate that you have a certain amount of knowledge and experience. So if someone says to you that they are a member of CAL-IF, that means that a group of professional IFs have vetted that person and vetted their work, that that's someone who really knows what they're doing and is a legitimate person. And so our vision is that in whatever language, whatever community regional center language that you're looking for, that you would be able to go and find many options of CAL-IF verified IFs that you will know that you are making a safe choice.
Thanks, Sunny. All right, I'm going to go to a range of questions about the process by which the regional centers are going to be filling out these forms, and people have a lot of concerns. So somebody was asking, so at this moment, there's no way for a participant or their family to know if their budget was pulled. That is correct. There is no way for them to proactively know that, although it hasn't happened yet, guys. Like none of this stuff has been implemented yet. But at this point, there isn't a way. But I should tell you that everything that deals with your case at a regional center, or your family member's case at a regional center, is subject to the Public Records Act. It's also subject to you getting to understand. It's actually not subject to the Public Records Act. You have a right to all information about yourself. And so you can definitely ask your regional center if your case has been selected, and you can ask to see it. If the regional center refuses to show it to you, I want to hear about it, and DDS wants to hear about it. And then someone else was also asking, like, what is the likelihood that regional centers decide not to do a random sampling, but just add this as a worksheet as part of the justification for any increase, so that they are actually filling out the form for every single person? I think it's possible that'll happen. They're going to have to show DDS how they did their random sampling. I guess they're going to have to do that. But believe me, they're not going to want to fill out this form for everybody. That's like so much work. But my greater concern is that they're not actually going to do a random sampling, and they're going to choose the people that they either want to lower their budgets or that they think are the most easy to justify. So that is a concern. All right, let's go to the next hand up, Tina.
It would be Connie. Connie, you can unmute. Connie, you're still muted.
Connie Boyer.
I can see that she's talking, but she's still muted.
All right, I'm going to ask her to unmute one more time. Go ahead, Connie. You should get something up on your screen that says the host would like you to unmute.
All right, I was pushing the wrong unmute.
There you go.
Sorry. Okay, so just some comments and a question, and forgive my cynicism, but I do think that there's a hidden agenda here that we've alluded to, but they may not be. I mean, I know, for example, our new DDS director is very into gathering data, and that's fine. My concern is that they're going to use this to show how much to the legislators, how unneutral or non-neutral this program is, because it'll make it easier for them to present that data, about the 20,000. because the original premise, I believe, was that this was supposed to be a neutral program. It wouldn't cost the state more. So I'm a little concerned about that agenda. I'm also concerned even about the attachment form. I don't know, did we have any input into it? And if not, can we stress a little or ask them to put in this attachment where they're gathering data a little more on the behavioral needs and mental health needs, because that increases people's budget a lot. And yet I didn't see it particularly emphasized, unless I missed it, in the attachment A. So I think we should have that in there. And then as far as another solution, I just feel like they're going to use this data to try to lower budgets, bottom line. And so I think we're going to have to start really documenting. I know I've been writing my director, please write another SIR, because to justify, because I feel like if you have, for example, a 2-to-1 high budget, I believe they're going to come after you. I really do. So that's my comment. Can we adjust the attachments so that they're a little bit more specific to show the need? And how are we going to counter this issue that they're going to say this program is not neutral?
Yeah. I don't know how much we have the ability to adjust anything right now. I think they're going to have to make that fix that Miriam was talking about, because that's what's confusing. But I don't know that we have any control anymore. So, here's what I can tell you all is that there were some of us advocates who did have early access to some of the language in the directive, and we were able to get feedback. And they did take a lot of our feedback because the early versions were particularly problematic. But also regional centers had significant access to the early versions of this directive, and they were all talking to each other about it. And so I don't really understand why DDS does this, where they treat regional centers differently than they treat us. And they think of them as, the partners as opposed to government contractors. And they forget that they're here to serve us as opposed to serve the regional centers. So obviously, I have grave concerns that this is not just about lowering people's budgets, that it actually is going to undermine the entire self-determination program by saying this program is not cost neutral and it cannot continue. So these are the things we have to make sure we fight against. And while I have grave concerns about regional centers and I have grave concerns about DDS, I want to say this to people who are listening, that you have to take responsibility as well. Your job is not to try to get the biggest budget possible and to try to shift what is normally the responsibility of a family member or normally the responsibility of a individual over to the government. Because remember, regional centers, while they're not actually government, they are quasi-governmental agencies. And all of their funding comes from state and federal government taxpayer funds. And so you should not be going into the self-determination program if what you're looking for is a big budget so that you can buy lots of stuff and so that you can bring, pay for lots of things that you've already been paying for out of pocket that would be a normal expense that you'd pay for out of pocket in your life. So that's why you're going into the SDP. You can just get off of our SDP Connect because that's not what we're looking for. Rick and I think, and Tina think of the self-determination program as our babies. Like, we birthed this. They birthed it before I did, and I helped birth the law that made it go statewide. And the reason why DDS is doing this is they're being very reactive. They're reacting to the stories that they're hearing about people taking advantage of the self-determination program. And whether we believe those stories are real or not, or whether they're, just a few people and not a lot of people, doesn't matter, because DDS believes it's a lot of people. And so that means that anybody, if you are one of those people who are spending your budget in ways that is inappropriate, you need to stop. And if you are one of the people asking for very high budgets when it is not needed, you need to stop. if any of you go on, and I've said this before, and then we'll go to other questions, but if any of you go on, there's a Facebook page that some people run around the self-determination program. Tina's on it all the time and is very, very good at responding to people and trying to keep people focused on what they should be focused on. I can only be on it every once in a while because it basically shortens my lifespan every day, every time I read it post, because there are people going on there, and they're unlikely to be people at this meeting, but they're going on there saying things like, how do I get a 6-figure budget? Or, and I remember a while ago replying to a person who asked that, your goal should not be a 6-figure budget. Your goal should be to do person-centered planning, identify your individualized needs, and figure out how the SDP can be part of the solution to help you meet those needs, just part of the solution. And I remember a parent of a 7-year-old getting really angry at me in the answers or whatever it is, saying, I had a great independent facilitator who got my 7-year-old son a $100,000 budget, so it can be done. And there it is in black and white on Facebook. And guess who also reads this Facebook page? DDS. So DDS is seeing people brag about the fact that their little kid has a giant budget. A 7-year-old does not need $100,000 in services. It's just not possible. They're in school all day. Well, and that's how come people are spending the money on things that are unnecessary, because they have too much money to spend the money on. So remember, the SDP was created so that people can have choice and control over their lives, have flexibility to provide interesting kinds of unique services to help you meet your IPP goals. It was created so that you can hire the staff you want that meet your individual needs and not be forced into using the staff that some supported living provider or some group home makes you have. That was why we created the self-determination program, not because for people to get lots of money. So I'm on my soapbox. You're going to hear it a lot at the conference next week. And if you don't want to hear it, you don't have to come, because we're oversold, and that will be fine. So I know, I'm sorry. I'm a bit whiny right now. All right, let's go to the next caller, or the next caller, our next hand up, because I haven't been looking at the chat.
Savannah Mahmood?
Mooniham, maybe?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was wanting to know because I was trying to get into a because I got Gmail, Claudia Cares, and I was trying to schedule an appointment. And I don't know if it. Let me think. Sorry. I don't know if it went through or not. Do you know how I would be able to tell?
I would not be able to tell, because we're not the same group as Claudia Cares, Savannah. I know that they're an organization that does independent facilitation, and you could probably give them I'll try to find their email and I'll send it to you, okay? So you can email them directly, okay, Savannah?
Okay, and I have another question, but I wasn't thinking. The Claudia Care thingy seemed more important than the other question. Is that okay? I'm sorry.
It's okay. Ask your question.
I'm getting a little nervous and walking around.
Don't worry
Just
about it.
Okay, it's a safe place. This is a safe place.
okay. Do you think would I be able? I don't mean to sound like this, but would I be able, if I were ever to want to visit family out of state, would I be able to do that or no? I'm sorry, I'm still transitioning into SDP, but I don't know how to explain.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry, Savannah.
Okay,
You're
I'm
doing
sorry.
great. You're doing great. So Savannah, let me tell you about traveling out of state. So you are absolutely allowed to travel out of state, but you can't necessarily use your SDP funds to do that.
I know. I just wanted to know if I'd be able to travel out of state
Of course.
as an SDP, or if that won't get taken away if I travel out of state, will it?
No, not at all. If you move out of state to another state and live there permanently, then you can't continue to use the self-determination program. But if you just go on vacation to Nevada or to New York, my son is in the self-determination program. We're going to New York for Thanksgiving, and he's coming with us, and he will be in the self-determination program.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. We'll
Thanks,
just
Savannah.
You
bye.
did great, Savannah. You did great.
Okay.
We love having current and future SDP participants at the SDP Connect. So we're so happy that you're here. All right. So thank you to Jan Opsveg, who asked this question, not about the SDP, but I'm so happy you did because I meant to talk about it before. She was asking whether there's a law that goes into effect about the Public Records Act. And so let me explain to you that on January 1st, 2026, so just in a couple months, regional centers will now be subject to the California Public Records Act. And what that means is that you can send an email or a letter. The regional centers will probably have forms on their website to fill out, and you can request information about anything that is not private. So, for example, you could ask, I would like to know how many people from your regional center are in the self-determination program and what their breakout is by age, by race, and ethnicity. So overall data you can ask, but you can't write them and say, I want to see Tina Ewing-Wilson's PCP. Like, you cannot ask private information like that. But there's a lot of interesting information you can ask for. So if you are interested in knowing what the rates are for certain service providers in the traditional system, you can ask to see the contract that the regional center has between that service provider and the regional center. And you can see all of the pieces of it, not only the amount of money they're spending, but all the things that service provider must do. You can ask for what are the salaries of every single person who works at the regional center. You can ask for their salaries. That is public information now. And so you can't ask for private information about a participant or an individual served by their regional center, but you can ask about the regional center staff. So, start thinking about that. I'd really like to know that information. And you can go ahead and start asking those questions starting January 1st. All right, next question, hand up.
Jordan?
Is unmuting. Thank you. I just wanted to piggyback on a couple of things that were said. First, I agree with you, Judy, that yes, there are people that are asked. That's why in the pilot program, we turned it over to FMSs because people were using the system. I work with people who say, oh, my kid needs the newest iPad or a Samsung. And I say, no, you need a tablet. Could be we're Mac people, iPhone. That's great, but you need the one that came out just this past month. Those are $1,000, $1,500 for these things. You need a working tablet. You need a phone, but you don't need the newest. Mm-hmm. And then they get upset when you tell them that. They're like, "Oh well, that's the other thing that I've been arguing about with my regional center and other regional centers when I go to meetings is that and for people, because that girl asked about going out of town, and the only service that's required is the FMS, but yet the only required service doesn't have to be in California, financial management service. Yet everything else has to be in California because one of my social rec has to be in California, but it's so expensive, camps and whatever you're going to do. And I have a place that's out of state. It's a lot less expensive. But, it has to be in California. So yeah, but if I'm going to go to camp somewhere, I would like to go to one that's a little less expensive. It may not be in California. That's an argument that I've been having to see if they could change that rule. As if you can find a camp, say in Colorado or South Carolina, with your kid, that's a lot cheaper. Then why should we? I know we want to keep the money here, but giving the money to FMSs that are out of state, so maybe they can make a little adjustment.
Yeah.
But would it actually be cheaper once you factor in the fact that you have to travel there?
Oh no, it's cheaper. Like I did the research when we had those conferences, like the SDP conferences that are at Sacramento or San Diego, and that's what I used to do. Travel and stuff, and you could go to Vegas and fly everybody. Years ago, fly everybody and get a hotel and still be cheaper. Still be cheaper to go to Vegas than to do a conference in Sacramento with the cost of everything, and flying people, no, it'd be cheaper because I did the math. I've done the math. So it would be a lot cheaper. Oh, not everything, just some things. That's my soapbox issue that I believe. So yeah, I know it would be cheaper. Anyway, there you go.
Thanks, Jordan.
I'm fighting
Appreciate you.
I'm fighting to think that some things could be done in California, some don't. I still believe again that the FMS is the noose around your neck, and we got to get rid of the FMS because they are the reason that a lot of people are stagnated in their plan. They can't get their FMSs to do what you want. And I always say it at every meeting, and I'll say it again. I hate the FMS. We need to figure out a way to do it without FMSs. With the burden rates, and if you transfer, and then the burden rates go up, and you have to factor
We
that in.
tried that. We tried that in the pilot. We didn't start out with FMSs.
Oh, yeah, I know, and
It
that was
a
some
disaster. We
bad
need them.
actors.
Trust me.
They were bad actors.
I
Right.
had my payroll stolen by a caregiver
Wow.
before there was FMSs. I really appreciate the FMSs, what they do, because I mean, I think there's a lot of barriers that are put up by the FMSs that need work. But I mean, the FMSs don't have an easy job. They have to pay for stuff before they get reimbursed. But, they make it happen for us. So I think sometimes we forget to be grateful for our FMSs.
Right. All right, let's take, we've answered a lot of the questions, so you can go ahead and take Sandra for our last couple minutes.
All right, Sandra. Sandra.
Thank you. So lots of great information here. And thank you very much for taking the time to explain these directives to us and give us an idea of what's coming. I want to encourage everyone here, participants, service providers, independent facilitators, family members, please start going to your self-determination local advisory committee meetings at your regional centers. The regional centers think we don't care because we don't show up. Please start going to your board of director meetings for your regional centers. These regional centers are doing stuff without the board of directors understanding what they're doing. And I saw something horrific at Kern Regional Center's last board of directors meeting that I'm still nauseated about a week later. We have to show up and start paying attention to what's going on. And please, this is how we're going to keep the whole regional center system honest. We have to show up. That's my thing. Thank you.
I agree completely. So I guess we only have a couple minutes left. We're only 1 minute left. So any final words from you, Rick, or you, Sonni?
Yeah. So I've got a lot to say, but just a few words. There's always been tension between need and cost, and that goes back 25 years to the pilots. It still exists. It doesn't mean that regional centers and the department wish to contain budgets, but it could. And so one of the principles is responsibility.
Yeah.
And responsibility means to not take advantage. That's what Judy is saying, not to take advantage, or to partner with the regional center and the department by contributing to some of the services in the event that an individual or a family is able. But I want to go back to these questions, because as I've been sitting here for the last hour, I'm looking at these questions and I'm thinking, well, what is it that's bothering me about them? Well, I'll tell you what it is. We have a system of 21 regional centers, and one of the strengths and one of the weaknesses of the self-determination program is that there is a lack of uniformity. It works, but it doesn't work because things are done differently everywhere. And the problem that I see with the questions, just generally, is that when you design a question, if the methodology of a question or the structure of a survey is whatever it is, it's going to impact the results or the outcome. And so when you ask an open-ended question, you're going to get a subjective answer. You look at these questions and they are open-ended. And the answers are going to be an interpretation of a fact, right? They're going to be somebody's view of something that may be said or something that they know about the consumer or the consumer's family. And so the same circumstance that is recorded by two different people for two different participants could result in two different outcomes. And I think it's going to be important for us to really monitor or make sure that the information that is developed, the information that is used, has some degree of consistency. In the event that it can't, we've got to call out the department because, as they say, garbage in, garbage out.
Right. Thank you so much. We've got to run because our interpreters have to take off, but I want to thank Rick and Sonni and Tina for joining me today to explain these directives to all of you. We can't wait to see all of those people, as well as many of you, at our conference next week. Please don't come if you're sick. That's my final plea. Don't come. We don't need to get everybody sick from our conference, but the rest of you, we can't wait to see you. Thanks, everybody. Good night.